pissed off, man. I'm pissed off. I'm livid. I am livid. Stephanie White, are you drunk? Are you drunk? You doing that stuff? You doing that stuff? I cannot believe Stephanie White had the nerve, the unmitigated gall to say that you are building the Indiana Fever. You are building this team around Kelsey Mitchell. Have you bumped your head? You done lost your mind. You done lost your mind. I knew we could not trust this lady.
The announcement landed like a thunderclap. Indiana Fever head coach Stephanie White made it clear Kelsey Mitchell was her top priority, the player she planned to build the team around. On the surface, it sounded like a strategic move, but beneath it was a stunning revelation. The statement effectively sidelined the athlete who had breathed new life into the franchise and reignited national attention. For many, this wasn't just a coaching decision, it was a public declaration that felt personal. Fans across the league looked on in disbelief as White outlined a vision that appeared to exclude the very star responsible for the Fever's resurgence. The reaction was instant and intense. Social media erupted, analysts scrambled for answers, and questions of loyalty and leadership filled the air. What followed was more than controversy, it was a defining moment. The message signaled an internal clash, a fracture in direction, and a looming storm for a team already under scrutiny. For Caitlin Clark supporters, the weight of those words cut deep, echoing as both a warning and a disappointment that the promise of unity had already begun to unravel.
To the Brondello podcast, where we're calling a spade. Great to be here with you guys today. The biggest hurdle that Caitlin Clark needs to overcome is her head coach. The biggest obstacle holding Caitlin Clark back from picking up where she left off after her rookie season, after her career at Iowa, the biggest obstacle in the way of her returning to that form is her head coach. Now, we saw Stephanie White lose.
The backlash was swift and explosive. Within minutes, social media turned into a storm of outrage as fans demanded that Caitlin Clark take control of her own destiny, even if that meant asking for a trade. "We stand with Caitlin," one commentator declared, capturing the energy of millions who shared the same frustration. The sentiment spread like wildfire. This wasn't about the Indiana Fever, and it certainly wasn't about preserving a franchise image. For many, the loyalty was clear. It belonged to Clark, the player who had transformed women's basketball into a national phenomenon. Every post, every clip, every heated debate circled back to one point: Clark's brilliance was being undervalued, even undermined, by her own organization. Fans felt blindsided. The coach's remarks were interpreted as a direct slight to the very star who had reignited the Fever's relevance and brought record-breaking attention to the WNBA. What followed was not just disappointment, it was a collective sense of betrayal. The bond between the fan base and the team fractured overnight, leaving one undeniable truth echoing across every timeline: the foundation of trust had been shattered.
Mitchell, have you bumped your head? You done lost your mind. You done lost your mind. I knew we could not trust this lady. I knew she was a weaseling little snake. I knew we couldn't trust. Caitlin Clark, you better do something. This is wild. Stephanie White and the Indiana Fever are planning on building the team around Kelsey Mitchell. We got Sandy Brondello taking the job as the head coach of the Toronto Tempo. Let's get into all this. Welcome to Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the channel, hit that bell notification. Let's roll. Can't stop, won't stop. Keep the Vision records because we...
Over time, a troubling pattern began to take shape. Stephanie White's tendency to minimize Caitlin Clark's achievements became impossible to ignore. When Clark earned a major national honor, an ESPY award that celebrated her influence on the sport, White reportedly offered little recognition. Instead, she shifted attention to former players whose moments in the spotlight had long since passed. What might have seemed like a small oversight felt, to many, like a calculated decision to downplay Clark's rise. Observers noticed that this wasn't an isolated moment. From comments implying the team played better without certain key players, to visible frustration on the sidelines after Clark's successful plays, the pattern became clear. It wasn't just what White said, it was how she said it, and what she chose to emphasize instead. Fans and analysts alike began to read between the lines. The coach's restraint, her selective praise, and her subtle reactions all painted the picture of someone reluctant to fully embrace her star's influence. What should have been a partnership built on mutual respect instead looked like an uneasy power dynamic. And as each instance piled up, the narrative grew stronger, that White, whether consciously or not, was standing in the way of the very player transforming her franchise.
Well, when she said the team's more dangerous without Caitlin, okay. When she said that it's a blessing that she's in, okay. But more specifically, when she was asked through the season, once Caitlin Clark won her ESPY award, Stephanie White was asked about this, and instead of boasting about Caitlin Clark, instead of gushing over Caitlin Clark, instead of hyping up her player, she brushed over Caitlin Clark's achievement, and she saw this as an opportunity to bring up players that nobody cared about in the past. Bring up Sue Bird. Yeah, Sue, you're cool. Nah, I don't care. Bring up Tarot. I don't care. Bring up Brianna. Nah.
The contrast in treatment could not have been more striking. While Kelsey Mitchell and Odyssey Sims appeared to enjoy complete freedom on the court, Caitlin Clark often found herself playing within invisible limits. Mitchell, an undeniably skilled scorer, seemed to operate under a permanent green light, taking shots at will, without hesitation or consequence. For Clark, that same level of trust and autonomy never seemed to materialize. Analysts and fans began pointing out the discrepancy. Game after game, they noticed Mitchell and Sims being granted leniency in moments where Clark would likely face scrutiny. Whether it was shot selection, defensive errors, or on-court emotion, the standards simply weren't the same. The perception grew that Coach White's personal preferences, or perhaps long-standing loyalties, were shaping her decisions far more than pure basketball strategy. This wasn't just about favoritism in playing style. It signaled something deeper, a systemic imbalance that subtly undermined Clark's ability to lead with confidence. The atmosphere around the Fever began to feel divided, the energy tense. To many, it looked like a hierarchy was emerging, one that inexplicably placed a once-in-a-generation talent on the second tier of her own team's priorities.
Number one priority thing is pissing me off too. I'm tired of hearing it. No, Caitlin Clark is supposed to be the number one priority. Getting the right people around Caitlin Clark is supposed to be the number one priority. Y'all have lost y'all damn mind. Y'all really think y'all somebody. We not there for y'all. Let's be clear. We don't give a damn about the Indiana Fever. We are Caitlin Clark fans. Don't get it confused. Y'all can go right back to playing in front of 6,000 and 7,000 people in an empty gym again for all we care. Y'all better figure it out.
She's been...
We support the Indiana Fever because of Caitlin Clark, so therefore we are Fever fans for now.
The loyalty to Kelsey Mitchell didn't stop with Coach Stephanie White. It reached into the very top levels of the organization. Kelly Crosscalf, the Fever's president, was the executive who originally drafted Mitchell years ago, and insiders say that connection runs deep. What might appear, on paper, as strategic consistency actually reflects something far more personal, an enduring allegiance born from past decisions and professional pride. Crosscalf's history with the franchise adds another layer to the story. After leaving the team and later returning to the front office, she seemed determined to validate the choices made during her earlier tenure, particularly the selection of Mitchell. That loyalty, while understandable from a human perspective, began to shape the franchise's identity in subtle but significant ways. For Caitlin Clark, this dynamic meant the playing field was never truly even. No matter how much excitement she generated or how transformative her presence became for the WNBA, the internal hierarchy was already in place, built on legacy rather than vision. The Fever's power structure, anchored in old loyalties, seemed to value the past more than the potential of its brightest star. The result was a quietly suffocating environment, where Clark's influence could shine only so far before running into walls of history and pride.
Lately, is that Stephanie White's allegiance to Kelsey Mitchell. Stephanie White's allowance of Kelsey Mitchell to have a green light we could only dream that Caitlin Clark has. And I'm a Money Mitch guy. I'm a Money Mitch, put him in a ditch. I love Money Mitch. But this is true. Kelsey Mitchell's green light is far greener than Caitlin Clark's. Kelsey Mitchell's able to get away with things on the basketball court that Caitlin Clark cannot get away with because of the green light that Stephanie White has given her. Same thing with Odyssey Sims. Odyssey Sims got away with things on the basketball court that Caitlin...
Last, the driving force behind the Indiana Fever's puzzling decisions began to surface, and it wasn't strategy. It was ego. Sources and analysts increasingly pointed to Kelly Crosscalf's personal stake in validating her earlier years with the organization. Her determination to prove that drafting Kelsey Mitchell was a masterstroke seemed to outweigh any practical vision for building a championship future around Caitlin Clark. One commentator summarized the issue bluntly: "This isn't about putting trophies in the case. It's about proving a point." That sentiment captured what many fans and insiders had already begun to suspect. The Fever's internal priorities were less about progress and more about pride. Instead of uniting around the generational player who had redefined women's basketball viewership and marketability, the front office appeared consumed with protecting reputations and rewriting history. Every roster decision, every public statement, every strategic move seemed filtered through a lens of self-preservation. In the end, the result was unmistakable. Clark's role, and by extension, the Fever's future, was being shaped not by her extraordinary talent, but by the lingering need of leadership to prove they'd been right all along. What could have been a golden era of growth was instead turning into a case study in how organizational ego can quietly sabotage success from within.
The teams in different.
What do you mean she carried the franchise? What you mean she carried? Before Caitlin Clark there, she never sniffed the playoffs. What are you talking about? She carried the franchise. What are you talking about? They had number one picks back-to-back years. What are you talking about, Stephanie White?
Different ways, and she deserves the opportunity to do that. I mean, it's close to home. For her, we love her. We want to continue to build, around her and.
I can't believe it.
For many fans, the situation had reached a breaking point. The fear was clear and painful. Caitlin Clark was being reduced to a Super 2-0 role, a secondary figure instead of the commanding leader everyone expected her to be. Despite her unmatched star power, her record-shattering viewership numbers, and the nationwide excitement she brought to women's basketball, the Fever's approach suggested something entirely different. Clark wasn't being handed the keys to her own offense. The idea that the most dynamic scorer of her generation might be limited to modest numbers, hovering around 18 or 19 points per game, felt like a betrayal to fans who tuned in expecting her to dominate. They didn't want restraint, they wanted the full force of Clark's creativity and competitive fire on display, the version that could easily drop 25 points and 12 assists while dictating the pace of every game. Instead, what they saw was hesitation, a system that seemed to clip her wings rather than let her soar. Every pass she deferred, every possession where she wasn't the focal point, felt like a missed opportunity for the franchise and the sport itself. Her immense talent wasn't just underused, it was being boxed in, shared in ways that dulled the brilliance fans had come to expect. For those who believed in her potential to redefine the game, it was more than frustration, it was heartbreak over seeing a generational player constrained by the very team meant to amplify her greatness.
To the Fever, obviously the 8 years she's been with the franchise, and how badly do you want to keep her around?
I mean, yeah, she was the number one priority a year ago, and she's the number one priority this year. She's been so important. And, I said this last year, Kelsey deserves to go through this stage of her Indiana Fever career.
No, she doesn't deserve anything. We're going to stop right there. The part of the Indiana Fever career that Stephanie White is talking about is being the main...
You could almost feel the tension surrounding the franchise. Whispers were spreading that the Fever weren't shaping their future around Caitlin Clark, the generational phenom everyone expected to lead the charge, but instead around Kelsey Mitchell, with Clark positioned as little more than a secondary piece. Analysts quickly dubbed it Super 2-0, a dynamic that many feared could implode before it ever found balance. Fans and commentators alike recoiled at the thought. The idea of Clark, known for her electric scoring, her court vision, her sheer command of the game, being reduced to a supporting role felt unthinkable. Her draw wasn't just in her numbers, but in her presence, the ability to dictate the pace, ignite the offense, and embody the identity of a team. To minimize that would be more than a strategic blunder, it would be a misunderstanding of what makes a star transcend the sport. For the Fever, and for the WNBA as a whole, forcing Clark to dim her own light would have risked far more than just a few losses. It would have been a misstep with league-wide repercussions.
Get out of there immediately. Get out of there now.
And continue to for her, we love her. We want to continue to build, around her and continue for her to have success.
When have we ever heard Stephanie White say we gonna continue to build around Caitlin Clark? We ain't heard her say that at all. At all. She wants to build this team around Kelsey Mitchell, and you know what? Let her do it. We take our things and we leave and let you do you, and we can go do us somewhere else. Ultimatum, Caitlin Clark,
Amid the Fever's internal uncertainty, a bombshell announcement shook the WNBA landscape. Sandy Brondello, the celebrated former head coach of the New York Liberty, was stepping into a brand new challenge, leading the expansion Toronto Tempo, set to debut in the 2026 season. Almost instantly, the fledgling franchise became a symbol of possibility, a potential escape hatch for Clark's growing legion of anxious fans. Brondello's resume spoke for itself. Known as one of the sharpest minds and toughest strategists in women's basketball, she transformed the Tempo from a mere expansion team into an attractive, legitimate alternative, a chance to build something from scratch. This was never just a routine coaching hire, it represented a clean slate, a fresh start in stark contrast to the uncertainty and tension that had begun to define Clark's current situation. The timing was uncanny, almost cinematic. Just as the Fever appeared to be limiting Clark's ceiling, a new path emerged, one brimming with opportunity, autonomy, and the promise of reinvention. For many, it was the kind of opening that could alter the trajectory of a career and, potentially, the league itself.
But Stephanie White, you handed the keys to Kelsey Mitchell this season. You didn't hand the keys to Caitlin Clark. At certain times, Caitlin Clark would go into your pocketbook while you were sleeping, steal your keys, and go out for a joyride. Yeah, that would happen occasionally. But by and large, you only handed the keys to Kelsey Mitchell. You only handed the keys to Odyssey Sims. It's just the facts.
She's been through sort of the worst of the worst, for lack of a better term, in and out of the building, growing pains with getting the organization back. You don't get back.
Sandy Brondello's resume alone commanded attention. Renowned for her tactical genius and her uncanny ability to elevate players' games, she had built a reputation as one of the league's most transformative coaches. Her appointment in Toronto was immediately hailed as a masterstroke, a statement that the Tempo intended to compete from day one. For Caitlin Clark's growing fanbase, who had been watching the Fever's turmoil with mounting frustration, Brondello represented something almost revolutionary, a coach who could genuinely recognize, nurture, and build a team around a generational talent. Unlike the stifling environment Clark faced in Indiana, Brondello's history suggested a culture of empowerment, one where skill and vision could flourish without being overshadowed by internal politics or rigid hierarchies. Suddenly, a tantalizing scenario emerged. What if Clark were paired with a coach whose mission was to unlock her full potential? What if she could lead a team that reflected her strengths, not dilute them? For many, it was an irresistible, what could be, a storyline brimming with both hope and high stakes for the future of the player and the league alike.
We take our things and we leave and let you do you, and we can go do us somewhere else. Ultimatum. Caitlin Clark called the agent. Ultimatum. Y'all want them or y'all want me? I'm fine with either answer. Y'all want Stephanie White and Kelsey Mitchell, or do y'all want me? Simple as that. Simple as that right there. We're not about to sit here and play no games. Who the hell are you talking to? Who are you talking to? You came here because of Caitlin Clark, trying to capitalize off her clout and her fame.
The moment news broke that Sandy Brondello would helm Toronto's new franchise, the conversation around Caitlin Clark shifted instantly. Fans, analysts, and pundits began speculating wildly. Could Clark take her talents north of the border and help build something extraordinary from scratch? The concept was simple, yet it carried revolutionary weight. Leave the chaotic Fever behind and step into a system designed to showcase her brilliance. Suddenly, the story transformed. What had been frustration, disappointment, and concern over Clark's diminished role in Indiana became hope, excitement, and anticipation for a fresh start in Toronto. Imaginations ran wild, Clark as the undisputed centerpiece of Brondello's expansion team, finally wielding the freedom to lead, to dictate the offense, and to shine without compromise. For many, the potential move represented more than a change of scenery, it was the ultimate statement of agency. A calculated, strategic exit from a franchise that hadn't fully recognized her value. If executed, it wasn't just a transfer, it was a power play, a bold declaration that a generational talent could and should control her own destiny.
This is business. This isn't feelings. We're not giving out gold stars. For all you hung around, here's a gold star. Here are the keys to the castle. Oh, I feel bad of all that she's been through here in the Indiana. Now that Caitlin Clark's here, got some attention, got this team playing above their means. Now here are the keys to the castle. Doesn't work like that, Coach.
We love her. We want to continue to build, around her and continue for her to have success.
Build around Kelsey Mitchell. I know I heard that wrong. Let me just wipe off my glasses. We're going to stop it right there. Now we can keep going.
Accusations of betrayal began to swirl around the Fever's front office and coaching staff. Critics argued that the organization had fully leveraged Caitlin Clark's meteoric rise and star power, yet appeared unwilling to construct a team around the very player who had fueled their prominence. One commentator summed it up succinctly, capturing the collective outrage. "You came here because of Caitlin Clark, now you're sidelining her to elevate someone else?" The sentiment resonated across the league. The Fever's newfound relevance, packed arenas, and surging viewership were tied directly to Clark's talent and charisma. Yet management's actions seemed to disregard that reality entirely, placing another player at the forefront while relegating Clark to a supporting role. This wasn't merely a lapse in judgment or poor strategic planning. For many, it crossed into the realm of outright disrespect. The situation had become untenable, a high-stakes clash between organizational priorities and the ambitions of a generational talent. It was a textbook example of what can go wrong when management underestimates the value of the very asset that made them significant in the first place.
Hell are you talking to? Who are you talking to? You came here because of Caitlin Clark, trying to capitalize off her clout and her fame. What are you talking about? We building around Kelsey Mitchell. Are you drunk? This lady's a snake. She's a bonehead. She has no idea what she's doing, but it's okay. Caitlin Clark just needs to leave the Indiana Fever. Let's take our talents to Canada with Sandy Brondello. Wait, let them do their thing over here. Let them do their thing. Let them do their thing. Caitlin Clark made Indiana Fever cool. The Fever wasn't cool. What are you talking about? Y'all wasn't lit. Well, nobody.
Before Caitlin Clark arrived, the Indiana Fever were little more than a footnote in the WNBA. Empty arenas, crowds of 6,000 or 7,000, and a team that had long been forgotten defined their reality. They weren't on anyone's radar, and for years, they hovered at the bottom of the standings, earning back-to-back #1 draft picks simply because the losses kept piling up. That history casts Clark's impact into stark relief. She didn't just join a team, she transformed it. To suggest that Kelsey Mitchell had been the driving force behind the Fever's relevance before Clark's arrival borders on absurd. The team's consistent struggles prior to Clark proved that it was her talent, presence, and star power that pulled the Fever into the national conversation. Her potential departure wasn't just a player leaving, it would be a franchise reverting to obscurity, a dramatic reversal of the momentum Clark alone had generated. For Indiana, she wasn't just a player, she was the lifeblood of a team suddenly thrust into relevance and visibility, a stark reminder of how one talent can reshape an entire organization.
Playing basketball? And CeCe's in the game? I'm driving this. What's with the allegiance? Kelly Krauskopf. Kelly Krauskopf. Kelly Krauskopf was the Fever president at the time they drafted Kelsey Mitchell. She has an allegiance to Kelsey Mitchell. They go way back. She wants credit for finding Kelsey Mitchell back in the day to prove to everybody else she made the right decision back then, drafting Kelsey Mitchell. That's what this.
Stephanie White's coaching decisions quickly became a lightning rod for criticism, especially when it came to Caitlin Clark. Observers noticed a pattern. When Clark took the shots that could define a game, she often faced resistance, yet teammates like Odyssey Sims and Kelsey Mitchell received the unquestioned green light to fire away. This glaring double standard didn't just frustrate fans, it sparked widespread suspicion that Clark's influence was being deliberately limited. For many, it seemed like a structural problem at the heart of the team. White's system, whether out of habit, preference, or misjudgment, appeared incapable of fully harnessing a talent as transcendent as Clark. Every decision that sidelined her offensive instincts felt like a missed opportunity, a tactical misstep that prevented her from commanding the game as she was clearly capable of doing. The consequence was obvious. Under this regime, Clark's ceiling was artificially constrained. What could have been a showcase for a generational star instead became a source of tension, debate, and frustration. For critics and fans alike, it was hard not to see the writing on the wall. Clark's true potential might never flourish under White's leadership, no matter how skilled or experienced the coach.
Do their thing. Let them do their thing. Caitlin Clark made Indiana Fever cool. The Fever wasn't cool. What are you talking about? Y'all wasn't lit. Well, nobody checking for y'all. Y'all was playing in a damn barn a few years ago. What are you talking about? Y'all got it twisted, man.
You know, I thought she she was so instrumental in everything that we did. You know, you lose everybody that we lost, and Kelsey Mitchell just kept getting better and better and better as the year progressed. And, you know, I think
you also gave her the green light to get better and better and better. Anytime Caitlin Clark shot the ball, you was calling a hero ball. But when it came to Odyssey Sims and Kelsey Mitchell, you gave them.
With each controversial move and statement from the Fever, the call for Caitlin Clark to pick up the phone and contact her agent grew louder, more urgent, almost deafening. It wasn't idle speculation, it was a collective cry from fans and pundits alike, urging her to demand a trade and remove herself from a situation that had become toxic. Supporters framed it as more than just a career move, it was about protecting her future, her legacy, and her well-being. Remaining in Indiana under these conditions wasn't just frustrating, it was potentially career-altering. Every moment she stayed felt like another risk to the respect, recognition, and opportunities she had earned through sheer talent and hard work. For Clark, the decision wasn't about impulse or drama. It was about self-preservation and seizing control of her narrative. The urgency was unmistakable, her career trajectory, her ability to flourish, and her chance to truly lead a team were all on the line. In the eyes of many, acting decisively wasn't optional, it was essential.
Ego thing. As much as that is a diminishing thing, but they're only diminishing because of their ego. We'll see what kind of off-season moves get made this season, this time around. Are they actually building towards a championship team around Caitlin Clark? Or are they building towards a championship team around Kelsey Mitchell with Caitlin Clark being Sue Bird 2.0? And I'm telling you right now, Kelly, Steph, Amber, nobody wants to watch Sue Bird 2.0. Nobody.
Toronto, under Sandy Brondello, presented a vision that was impossible to ignore, a blank canvas, a team built around Caitlin Clark from the ground up. This wasn't about negotiating minutes, sharing the spotlight, or navigating internal politics. This was about Clark being the undisputed centerpiece, the foundational star of an entirely new franchise. Brondello's reputation for cultivating winning cultures and maximizing elite talent aligned perfectly with what Clark needed, a system designed to let her thrive without compromise. For Clark, the Toronto tempo offered more than just a fresh start. It was a chance to escape the frustrating and diminishing tactics she faced in Indiana, to work with a coaching staff and front office wholly committed to her success. It was the promise of unbridled potential, a rare opportunity to define her career on her own terms. Now, Clark faces a choice loaded with immense pressure. Stay with a franchise that seems unwilling or unable to prioritize her talent, or pursue a bold new path in Toronto, where she could finally become the undisputed cornerstone she deserves to be. The question is unavoidable: Stephanie White and Kelsey Mitchell, or me? It's more than a career decision, it's a declaration of value, legacy, and ambition. The stakes are sky high. The decision she makes could not only shape the rest of her career, but potentially alter the WNBA's landscape for years to come. The tension is palpable, the league watching every development, and the storm is building. Caitlin Clark's unparalleled talent clashes with a team tied to its past, while Toronto offers a shining alternative, a beacon for a star who cannot be contained. Will Clark endure the limitations of a team that won't put her first, or will she make the audacious move to claim the role, freedom, and recognition she deserves? The future of WNBA stardom hangs in the balance, and the world is waiting to see which path she will take.